Everybody, welcome, welcome. Good afternoon. Bienvenido. Buenas tardes. We're going to be getting started in just a minute. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're going to give folks a few more minutes or a few more seconds to be coming in from the waiting room. But for now, I am going to turn it on over to our Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Policy Center, Felicity Williams.
Thank you, Adrian. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this very timely edition of our Policy Action Series. For those who have joined us before, welcome back. For those who are new, we are glad that you are here with us today. At the Pennsylvania Policy Center, we host these policy action calls on the first and third Thursdays at 1 p.m. to educate Pennsylvanians about public policies that impact our communities and to create space for collective activation. This month, we have combined our state and federal calls into one. Our work is rooted in the belief that public policy should benefit everyone and that informed people can organize to shape a more just Commonwealth. As Adrian said, my name is Felicity Williams, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Policy Center. It is truly an honor to convene this conversation today alongside our partners who are doing frontline advocacy and organizing across our state. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. All attendee lines are muted to minimize background noise. However, we want this to be interactive. So at any time during the conversation, please drop your questions into the Zoom chat at the bottom of your screen. When we move into the Q&A portion, our moderator will pose as many of those questions to our panelists as time allows. We are also actively monitoring the chat and want to be clear that this space is grounded in respect and shared humanity. Hateful speech, harassment, or discriminatory language of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone engaging in that behavior will be removed from the call. Now, I want to ground us in why we are here. Over the past several months, we have seen an increasing presence of immigration enforcement activity across Pennsylvania. Just yesterday in southwestern Pennsylvania, the mayor of Wilkinsburg publicly confirmed ICE activity in his borough and emphasized that his priority was the safety and stability of his residents. This is not theoretical. This is happening in our communities, in Berks County, in Luzerne, in Pike, in rural Pennsylvania, and in boroughs and townships across the Commonwealth. At the federal level, Congress has redirected billions of taxpayer dollars away from healthcare and public benefits into expanded ICE and CBP operations. But what matters most is not just those budget lines. What matters is the lived reality. Families experiencing fear, neighbors disappearing from their communities, children wondering if their parents will come home. In moments like this, misinformation spreads quickly, rumors spread quickly, fear spreads quickly. This call is designed to make sure that in a world of misinformation, you receive accurate, grounded information about what is actually occurring here in Pennsylvania, and to ensure you leave here knowing how you can get engaged. Because we must also acknowledge something deeper. We do not have to look abroad to understand what state-sanctioned terror and forced removal look like. We do not have to search history books about other countries. We need only look at some of the darkest chapters of our own history. From slavery, slave patrols, and the forced separation of Black families, to the Trail of Tears and the displacement of indigenous communities, to Japanese internment camps, to mass incarceration and extrajudicial killings that gave rise to the Black Lives Matter movement, to where we are today that brings us all to this call. The use of state power to target communities, detain people without due process, and remove them from their homes is not new in this country. It's part of a legacy we must confront honestly. And as a Black woman descended from enslaved people and as the granddaughter of a Guatemalan immigrant, I feel this moment in a very personal way. But I also feel something else. Hope. Hope that comes from solidarity in spaces like this one, where advocates, organizers, researchers, elected officials, and everyday Pennsylvanians gather not simply to react, but to respond with clarity and action. Today, you will hear from leaders who are working every day to protect immigrant communities, to build rapid response networks, to push back against 28-7G agreements, and to defend welcoming policies across Pennsylvania. Our goal is simple: to ensure that immigrant communities are not isolated, to ensure that facts rise above fear, and to ensure that every person on this call understands that there are concrete ways to engage. Because while these enforcement operations may be expanding, so is solidarity. And Pennsylvania stands at a crossroads. The decisions made at the federal level reverberate here, but so does our organizing. With that, I'm proud to introduce my colleague and our campaign director, Dwayne Heisler, who will guide us through today's conversation and introduce our incredible panelists. Thank you all for being here. And Dwayne, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Felicity, and thank you, Adrian, as well. I just want to acknowledge our incredible speakers today and give them a chance to introduce their organizations. They've worked really hard to bring the latest information to you. We will also have time, as you heard at the end, and you can see in the chat, for question and answer. We want to be able to get to as many of those as possible. So with that being said, I would like to first introduce Alex Domingos. He's the Advocacy and Policy Strategist for the ACLU PA. And Alex, if you could tell us a little bit about the ACLU of PA.
Sure. Thanks, Dwayne, and everyone for coming today. So the ACLU of Pennsylvania is a nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization that works to protect the civil liberties, and advance equity for all. For more than 100 years, the ACLU has sought to protect and expand the freedoms of expression, belief and association, voting rights, separation of church and state, privacy rights, including reproductive freedom, due process, including the rights of the accused and immigrants, limitations on the power of police, and the right of equal protection for all, including marginalized and historically disadvantaged individuals and groups, by integrating litigation, legislative and policy advocacy, organizing and communications. ACLU-PA staff and volunteers work both independently and in coalition with those most affected by the issues that we hope to address, and ensure that the threats to liberty and civil rights of all people in Pennsylvania are met with stark resistance.
Thank you so much, Alex. Such incredible work. Next, I'd like to introduce Tammy Murphy, who is the Public Policy and Advocacy Manager for Make the Road Pennsylvania. Tammy?
Hi, thank you so much. Tammy Murphy, she, her pronouns, and I am with Make the Road Pennsylvania. We build power for justice in Latinx, Black, immigrant, and working class communities. We empower community members to be principled agents and leaders in challenging and dismantling systemic oppression through community organizing of policy innovation, transformational education, and dismantling systemic oppression through civic engagement and advocacy. And we have offices in Hazleton, Allentown, Reading, and Philadelphia. Thank you for having us.
Tammy, so glad that you're here. Also, I'd like to introduce Julio Rodriguez. He is the political director for the Pennsylvania Immigration Coalition, also known as PIC. Julio.
Yes, thank you so much, Dwayne. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julio Rodriguez. I'm with the Pennsylvania Immigration Coalition. We're a statewide immigration advocacy organization. We have 60 member organizations, which range from churches, nonprofits, community groups, and we're in 27 counties. We provide capacity building, policy analysis, and policy suggestions to bring about welcoming policies throughout the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio. I'm glad that you're here. We have another speaker, but there's been, so this is evolving. There's been some ICE activity happening in New York and in some parts surrounding that area, and I'm not quite sure if Shemaine was able to get on the call here. Is Shemaine here? You know what we're going to do? Shemaine actually prepared a slideshow a little bit about We Are CASA, which is an incredible partner of ours in Pennsylvanians Together. So if someone could bring up that slideshow, and I just want to, because she worked hard on this program as well, and I just want to acknowledge CASA and the work that they do. If we could share that slide. Okay. If we can put it into, there we go, into the slide. No, we're not seeing it. There we go. That's looking right. And if you could, there we go. So CASA is an organization that was founded back in 1985 with day laborers, emphasizing workers and immigrant rights. They are the largest national membership-based immigrant rights organization in the country. The region that incorporates Pennsylvania and CASA, here we are CASA, includes Georgia, Virginia, and Maryland. Advocacy work, electoral work. They have over 190,000 members in 35 states. Next slide. They have been involved in so many different cases and work. And one of them, which is is ever evolving, is the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. You may have seen it on TV, and I've always taken note to the red CASA shirts that I see here. And also, CASA wanted to notate that Maryland just banned 287G agreements, and you'll hear a little bit more about what that means. We want to bring that information to you, but it is an incredible victory and one that every state in the country should be following right now. Maryland had the courage to do that, and so yes, I see all the reactions to it, and rightfully so. Next slide. They are not only dealing with the hyper local challenges that they have, like what's going on today in the state, but they also are part of what's happening in a national way. Their funding, of course, has been restricted because of data sharing requirements from the federal government. So they're no longer accepting those funds. Several court cases that are here. But the main thing I want to share with you, and if you can jot this down, there is a tip hotline, and that number is 888 214 6016. That's the CASA tip line, 888 214 6016. I wanted to share that as well. And I believe that's all that she was able to put together this morning. But thank you for sharing that slide, Laura, for us. Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to just jump right in so we can hear from each of our speakers, but then also that we have time for the question and answer. And so the first question that I'd like to put out is, I want to start with maybe a bigger view, like what is the 10,000-foot view of state immigration enforcement as you're seeing it, and detentions in the country today. And I thought maybe I would just kick that off with if we could hear from Pick on that, since you're at the forefront of those things, Julio.
Yeah, sure thing, and thanks for the question. So just to level set, there's about 1,021,000 immigrants here in Pennsylvania, also known as foreign born. And so that's really important because folks also come from mixed status families. What's super important is taking a look at all the details, because what's happening is there's a lot of collaboration and data sharing happening with ICE, starting through the governor's office, through executive action that he could take to limit that access, such as access to databases such as JNet, Clean, and making sure that, we're signing on to all the applicable lawsuits. There's so many lawsuits right now, but making sure that people's data is safe. In the state legislature, there's about 30 plus pro-immigrant bills that are being floated, which is great. So I encourage people to contact their state rep or senator and ask them where they're at with some of these bills, which are super critical, such as preventing local state dollars that go to law enforcement to be utilized for immigration enforcement. And at the super local level, there's approximately over 50 287G agreements, which would deputize law enforcement, not just police, including sheriffs, district attorneys, and even local jails to participate in immigration enforcement. What's unique is that public pressure goes a really long way for all of these things. 287G agreements can be ended at any time. What we're seeing is that public pressure does in fact help reverse some of these contracts and prevents new places from signing on. And what I would say as well is we're not in a place right now to be okay with statements. I have seen so many statements coming from different places about that we don't work with ICE, that's federal. But if you look at the details, many of these institutions are okay with working with ICE if there happens to be some kind of criminal justice intersection. I want to be really crystal clear. Criminal justice and immigration are completely separate entities. And it is not okay to make the justification that some people should be targeted for immigration enforcement. I say that because most recently, I use Montgomery County as an example. The district attorney put out a statement saying they don't work with ICE. But then if you look at the very local level, like somewhere like Jenkintown, a municipality, their policy says that they will in fact contact ICE if the person has some kind of criminal history. But their practices, they said, well, we won't do it unless a judicial warrant. So really going in and asking these questions, and if there isn't a policy, making sure that one is put in place because the absence of a policy allows for there to be mishap. So that's like the super high level, and making sure that folks are asking these questions from the right people. And just the last thing I'll say is that solicitors work for government, not the other way around, because what we're seeing is mayors, township managers are completely deferring to the solicitor, but the solicitor works for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Julio. Would someone else like to follow up with Julio to the question about the 10,000-foot level and what we're seeing in terms of detentions in the country today?
Yeah, just to add on briefly, I mean, Felicity did a great job of writing this down in the beginning, but where we're at right now on the national level is we've seen really a supercharging of existing, like the existing immigration and enforcement and detention ecosystem. So, like, increased funding has led to a surge in hiring for ICE and Customs and Border Patrol. It's led to more funding for interior enforcement, which has led to a lot of the like confrontations that we've seen in the media. And it's led to an increase in detention centers, such as purchases of warehouses that ICE is now trying to use to really multiply their capacity to hold folks in detention. In addition, as the highly confrontational and aggressive tactics I mentioned before. So, like Julio mentioned, that's why we focus on the collaboration here at the state and local levels, because that's really a force multiplier for the mass deportation machine. And it's for the most part entirely voluntary. So, although the federal government may try to entice or bully states and local governments to augment the deportation machine, it's entirely voluntary. And like Julio mentioned, of course, the legislative attacks. There are some positive bills, but there's also always anti-immigrant bills introduced at both the federal and state levels as well that all the organizations here today are hard at work pushing back against.
Thank you. Thank you for that follow-up, Alex. There's been quite a number of high-profile incidents between ICE and Border Patrol, and also has involved the public and also rapid response groups. Can you explain like what these are and how they actually work? And Tammy, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick us off on that.
Okay. We're certainly happy to talk about it. So we know of plenty of the high-profile cases. Keith Porter was murdered on New Year's by an off-duty ICE agent. We know about Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy in Minnesota, and locally at the hands of federal agents. Parity Law also died. Chow Feng Ti was, I think, the 11th person who died in ICE custody since the administration began, since Trump began the second presidency. This is just a short list of a lot of people who have died, either at the hands of ICE directly or in custody. So there's multiple problems in multiple directions. So the goal, of course, is to prevent people from ending up in these deadly detention centers. And one of the ways that people do it is to form a rapid response. And it's a form of like mutual aid. It's a form of community protection. And the idea is that like there's a system, and I think that this has been very public for a while. So we're kind of keenly aware of the fact that ICE is well aware of the system. But at some point, somebody sees something that they think is like ICE activity in a community, and they reach out to some kind of group organizer, group dispatcher, something like that. And they let people know. And one of the roles is to observe. Somebody should, go by, walk, drive, whatever it is, and identify, is it really ICE? Is it local police? There could be a multitude of different agencies that work in any community at any time. So just to dispel fears and not to like create panic for no reason, people first want to identify, is this actually ICE? And there's a whole form, salute, you should say like the size of the force, you should talk about the uniforms that they are wearing, what is their location. So there's a whole format for that once you're trained to identify and then clarify to confirm whether or not that is actually deportation activity. And then there's a couple people who come on scene. We have a legal observer, just like in lots of different protest situations. You have a legal observer that is there to record with a video, with a phone or a camera, if possible, or otherwise take notes that could be used in a legal case. This is to assist in case anything ICE does is illegal. The point is to record it, to record which agents are doing which things, to identify them, who is doing which behavior. These are things that are kind of done at a distance and just to like as an observational thing to record what is happening. And they could later be used in a court case. Some of the other roles are what was called a disruptor, and that might not be the right word for it. But then the other role is a de-escalator. So I can explain that disruptor is not to like physically disrupt, but the idea is to like cause some attention and get the ICE agents to pay attention to them, find out from the community perspective, like what is going on, gauge their attention a little bit. And a de-escalator is to basically, if temperatures are rising high, to have somebody there to calm the situation, bring it down a little bit, try to talk peacefully and make sure that things go smoothly, no one gets hurt. That's the idea, is to keep things calm on all sides. And one of the things that people are trying to do in this situation is make sure that people know their rights. For example, you do not have to open your door. You have a right to stay safe within your own home unless there's a judicial warrant. And in most cases, there's not a judicial warrant. Sometimes they have an administrative warrant, which is not worth much more than the paper it's printed on. But a judicial warrant is to be taken seriously. It's just rare that they have them because in most cases, this is a civil matter, not a criminal matter. So you wouldn't have a judicial warrant. So it's rare. So you're checking to see if they have a judicial warrant. In the case that they do not have a judicial warrant, they have no right to come into your home. They have no right to come into your workplace. So the idea is then keep the door closed, don't open the door. They don't have a warrant. They have no right to say. SALUTE is the acronym. Thank you, Adrienne. So that's the procedure, is basically to let people know what their rights are, how to remain safe, and the community that's there is hopefully to bring the temperature down, to keep the community members safe. And so that's the sort of gist of the rapid response. There's a lot more training that is involved, a lot more detail for each role. But ultimately, you're there to like record, calm things down, hopefully talk to the agents, see what can be done, see if there's actually a warrant. And what we've seen in cases like in Minneapolis, the agents are unhinged. It's not following like known protocol for law enforcement. So a lot of this preparation that people have done for the rapid response is being thrown in flux because the agents are not necessarily law-abiding in these situations, and they're not following normal police protocol. So a lot of that is being challenged in a lot of ways by this federal agency.
Tammy, thank you so much for that breakdown. That was incredible, and really helps to ground us in what is actually happening with these groups. I'm wondering, would you be willing to just talk us through the salute a little bit about, when someone is reporting ICE activity, what should they be looking for?
Sure. So you want to look for the size of the group. Like if you drive by and someone says that, for example, I you get a call and they say, I think I see ICE agents outside of the car wash. And so someone drives by or walks by or somehow observes. You want to see the size. Are there 6 agents or are there 25 agents? Big difference of the kind of, is this a 25 agent raid or is this a six um, officer, investigation or something? The size makes a big difference. So you also want to make sure that you have um, an address, like the location, what particular uniforms. If somebody is popping off some images, that's great. You want to make sure that they have uniforms. They wear, sometimes they're plain clothes. We're seeing a lot of that in Minneapolis. What we have seen in the past are it'll say ICE police or it'll say DHS, and sometimes there are other federal agencies that are brought in to do the work of deportation, and they tend to identify themselves. If we have it, it's good. But like I said, sometimes they're just going plain clothes. But still, you have to let us know what you see. If it's not a uniform, we want to know exactly what we see. We want to know the time and any kind of equipment or other things that we see. Are they armed? Are they wearing like bulletproof vests? Do they have any other kind of uh, vehicles with them that are identifiable? So these are basically the things that we go through, and there's a lot of training that goes into it. I don't expect people to like do it kind of willy-nilly. You should definitely seek some training. There's plenty available.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for breaking that down for us, Tammy. So important. Alex, can you explain the difference between the federal government's role and local government's role in immigration enforcement and also detention? What is the difference between those?
So, as I mentioned before, immigration enforcement is solely the purview of the federal government. Um, ICE and Customs and Border Patrol are under the jurisdiction of the Department of Homeland Security, and it's funded by Congress. So, while state and local governments must follow court orders and honor subpoenas and judicial warrants under what's known as the anti-commandeering doctrine, that's rooted in the 10th Amendment, they cannot be compelled to enforce federal regulatory programs. So while state and local governments cannot prevent the federal government from doing, raids or other immigration enforcement, that also means that they cannot be forced into doing the work of immigration enforcement. So just briefly, it's very important, as we've all mentioned, and as we will continue to mention, that state and local governments don't have to collaborate with ICE outside of court orders or judicial warrants. So that's some of the main work that we are encouraging folks to join us in, is making sure that that voluntary collaboration is prevented.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that explanation, Alex. We've heard a lot about welcoming policies and also about 287G agreements. How do we stop these? And Julio, I'd like to maybe toss it over to you first to talk us through welcoming policies, 287G agreements, and what can we do to stop these?
Yeah, absolutely. I could start with the 287G agreement. So to follow to what Alex said, these are all voluntary collaborations. So 287G is simply like the reason why it has that weird name is because it's part of the INS, the Immigration Nationalities Act, which is federal. And so looking up, there's a website on ICE that shows you which municipalities currently have or which law enforcement agency has a fully executed contract or a pending contract. And so finding out and reaching out to the mayor or the council, and in most places, the police chief or the law enforcement agency just can't unilaterally join these agreements. They should be getting permission. We've heard of instances where the mayor didn't even know that the police chief was doing this. That happened in Adams County. And so having people make calls could be as simple as like 10, 15 calls asking for the contract to be terminated, and then having at least 5 or 6 people to go to a local government, a local council meeting stating that they object to this. As far as welcoming policies, really taking samples that are available. ACLU PA has a really great sample as to what should be included, but providing this to the municipality so that they can adopt it and making sure that it's a actual policy that's passed via resolution or ordinance, because what we're seeing is most places want to do an internal policy because for many reasons, but that's not good enough because that could be changed overnight. Could be changed today, tomorrow, yesterday. And it's really important because this really sets really clear parameters as far as what all employees should be doing, how they should not be honoring what's called ICE detainers, how they should not be sharing data that's not required by law, how they should not be providing perimeter support, the utilization of equipment, databases, police vehicles, allowing for staging or allowing for enforcement to take place in private spaces in a public setting. So it's if ICE shows up to inside a courthouse, unless they're there as a member of the public, they shouldn't be there. They can't just start arresting people. And so when those policies are not in place, you open the door for these things to transpire. At the end of the day, there's legal liability that the municipalities have when they cooperate with ICE. ACLU has done a really great job of filing litigation, but over the last 10 years, there's been nearly 1.1 million in payouts where police departments or counties violated the law and either racially profiled individuals or unlawfully held U.S. citizens that resulted in those payouts, which come from our local dollars.
Yes. Thank you, Julio, for that. I wonder, can someone speak about welcoming policies?
I
I
mean, Julio
am
did a great
happy to.
job sort of breaking it down. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tammy.
Oh, it's okay. You want to break it down and then I can talk about our experience?
Sure. So yeah, I like to look at it as sort of a spectrum, right? So like on the one end of where we want to be is a robust to welcoming policy. So like what Julio mentioned, it prevents the use of local resources for immigration enforcement. So that's employee time, access to government buildings, sharing information, honoring ICE detainers, et cetera. There's this sort of squishy middle that Julio mentioned where we get a lot of statements instead of policies, but those allow for any individual, police officer or county or township employee to pick up the phone and call ICE, right? Without a strong policy, there's really nothing preventing that. And then all the way on the other far side of the spectrum is 287G agreements, particularly the task force model, which we've seen has been the predominant model that these new agreements have been, where essentially your taxpayer dollars are paying for your local officials to essentially be deputized as an immigration enforcement. So they're using your taxpayer dollars, the hours that they're supposed to be, ostensibly serving the community, they're instead focusing on immigration enforcement. And like Julio did a great job breaking down, that leaves them open, that they're open to all the liability that comes with them, moonlighting as immigration enforcement officers without any background. So a robust welcoming policy really goes through and tackles all the different areas of collaboration that are possible, and really make sure that, like we mentioned, uh, states and municipalities can't prevent ICE or CBP from entering your jurisdiction, right? But they can make sure that they're not collaborating voluntarily.
Yeah, so previously, CASA led a great campaign in Lancaster, getting a welcoming city ordinance in Lancaster. That was prior to this presidential administration, um, in between the last one and this one, I think. And then since then, there have been quite a few of them in Pennsylvania. For Make the Roads behalf, we did one in obviously in coalition with lots of other people, but we saw enactment of a welcoming cities policy in Allentown. And that was modeled off of the one in Lancaster and sort of, localized, slightly adjusted for Allentown. And then it was replicated again in Reading. And it was successful in Reading. Both Allentown and Reading actually were um, they were accepted on the evening that they were introduced, and they were voted on unanimously, which was a really great success. We were very happy with the outcome of those. And then there have been quite a few others, and we're currently working with our coalition partners in Philadelphia. We were very, very excited to have what existed in Philadelphia, and I might be getting ahead of myself. Um, we had a policy there that was an executive order, and we're hoping to switch that to become legislation based on city council. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I don't know if you were planning on asking about that, Dwayne.
Oh, you feel free to go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay, so our coalition tried to meet with the mayor quite a number of times to figure out exactly like how she was using her executive power. She was very quiet about her stance on immigration. And we heard from other people from the law department and quite a few other people that she had told city council members and she had told different agents that they were abiding by the executive order that existed. And even that executive order was relatively limited, but that they were abiding by it. But she herself hadn't spoken about it. And I think a lot of advocates felt nervous that just having that kind of rule in the hands of one person who is elected and can change at any point, whether Mayor Parker honored it or not. Somebody later she could be move on to a different office and somebody else could take her place and then not honor that. So it's more secure to have it in legislation. So we wanted it in the form of an ordinance. Because it's a in other cities we are able to get it sort of like all of the different issues into one ordinance. It's a little bit more complicated in Philadelphia. It's a much bigger city. And what happened was Rue Landau, Councilmember Rue Landau and Councilmember Kendra Brooks ended up introducing a package of 7 bills. And those 7 different pieces of legislation are in what's called now the ICE out package. We just found out that it is finally moving into committee, which is a really big step. It was introduced, and there were multiple co-sponsors to the point where it is like veto proof, which is really great for us. And now it's going to go into committee where they're going to review it in detail, make any amendments that are necessary, hopefully not too many, and then vote on it. And what we're hoping to get out of it is like a whole layer of protections that were not just embedded into just the executive order that was there. And Julio and Alex, you can jump in anytime, but some of the protections include non-discrimination, um, uh, ICE not wearing masks and having to identify themselves, the city not collaborating and sharing data with ICE, not holding detainers for ICE, and I think that covers it. So some of the legislation exists already and it just needs to be updated, like the non-discrimination. It needs to be updated to include immigration, and then also covers other communities, like the LGBT community is also covered in this. But then some of it is new, some of it is older and just needs to be revised. So that's one of the reasons that it's not just a single ordinance in Philadelphia, but it's 7 pieces of legislation coming in as one package.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy, for that. Alex, I'm wondering, like, ICE has been around for a while, right? Like, I'm wondering how much that we're seeing in the media and in our communities is new versus the standing, like, long-standing actually practices of ICE and the CBP.
Thanks, Dwayne. It's a really good question. And really, I just want to emphasize that like very little of what we're seeing right now in terms of immigration enforcement and detention is new per se. It's just simply a turning up of the dial of existing authorities, capacity, and resources, right? So, ICE is a relatively young agency. However, under the last several Congresses and presidential administrations, funding for the agency has increased, and it's led to the predictable outcomes that we're seeing today, right? Um, Take, for example, the Moshannon Valley Processing Center. It's currently the largest immigration detention center in the Northeast, and it's located in Pennsylvania, in Clearfield County. It was opened under the last presidential administration, right? And predictably, the beds in that facility are now being filled, right? So this work started under the last administration. PIC led a group sign-on letter uh, urging the last administration to close the facility because of what could happen, and that has come to pass. Right, the legal authority for these federal actions that we're seeing, some of them trace back to Japanese internment. Right, the abuses and deaths that have occurred in these facilities are not a new occurrence, right? These facilities, since they've been open, regardless under the administration, have had abuses, right, and very poor oversight. We know that immigration detention leads to abuse and deaths. And that's why the organizations on this call and that we're in coalition with have, again, over the past several administrations and Congresses, called for the closure of these facilities. ICE routinely violates the civil rights of individuals. They've been doing it for years and they're continuing to do it now. It's just simply become more obvious and more visible in the media. And, for years, in a bipartisan fashion, the political system has thrown immigrants under the bus and immigrant communities. And while immigrant leaders and organizations have warned about the consequences of these policy choices, they have been ignored. So it's important, I think, going forward that we all remain clear-eyed and not forget the lessons of this moment, right? That where there is capacity, like where there are beds, they will be filled, right? Where there's an agency that routinely violates people's rights, it's always a possibility that their funding can be increased and their power can grow, especially when there's these laws from from American history that facilitate those abuses. I think it's very important that going forward we follow the leadership of immigrant communities, and we must make immigrant rights a bright red line going forward in our advocacy, because we now see what happens when we don't, right? It affects not only immigrants, not only immigrant communities, it affects all of us, right? Documented or undocumented. It doesn't stop with certain communities. So I think solidarity and following the leadership of these immigrant communities is crucial, because they have warned about these moments, right? And it's come to pass. So going forward, they're the ones, and these projects and calls to action that we will share later are being led by immigrant communities. And I think that's really the path forward to achieving liberation, I think, for all of our loved ones.
Thank you for that, Alex. It's a perfect segue into my next question of, like, what can we do? Like, what can the average citizen, how can they make a dent in this mass deportation machine that's happening? And Julio, I'm going to share your website because I know you have some calls to action, but maybe you can kind of talk us through it, if that's okay. You know what? I'm going to drop it in the chat as well, and let me share my screen, and you can talk me through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to really quickly piggyback off what Alex said, I think what's different now is that, and I've been saying this, is that immigration is a life or death situation where people are being held indefinitely in detention. People have to worry about being removed to third-party countries, and where there is no immigration system. Now immigration judges are being hired as deportation judges. So really we are asking folks to take actionable steps. So the first one is there's a campaign asking Governor Shapiro to end ICE collaboration. We're having folks call and send messages. In the middle, it talks about what are some of the ways in which this is happening. And what the governor's saying now is not in line with his actions. For example, individuals that recently served a state prison sentence and who may have an ICE detainer are being turned over to ICE. From January to October of 2025, that affected 72 people. So someone that, made a mistake, went to prison, served their time, they immediately get turned over to ICE. Shapiro's team has said, quote, "We don't want criminals in the Commonwealth," even though they've gone through and did what they were supposed to through due diligence. And most of the time, people may have a deportation order because they were in prison and they couldn't go to the immigration court hearing. But below this, we have different county campaigns. So in Allegheny County, there's a big push between members to have the county adopt a policy that would affect all of its employees, all of its departments, and as well as its prison board, making sure that it's codified in practice and that there is absolutely no data sharing. Right below that is Clearfield County, where Mo Shannon is. The county commissioners can end the contract when it's up for renewal, and that will then ultimately result in the closure of the detention center because right now ICE, the county's leasing the land to ICE, and to the Geo Group. And then right below is for Dauphin County, Montgomery County, every single county, there's 67 counties, and so folks can take a look as to where they're at, and as well as Philadelphia. And I can't stress this enough, calling a member of Congress every week, every day, depending on what's happening. Right now, there isn't a DHS appropriations bill, but having the ICE doesn't need to exist. We had ICE, we didn't have ICE 20, 30 years ago. So there's an argument to be made that this is only going to continue if the system continues to be in place and won't change until members of Congress hear from everyday people as to why this needs to be eliminated.
Right. Thank you so much for walking us through. I did put the link for that take action from PIC, from the Pennsylvania Immigration Coalition, in the chat. So please click on that, save that, and it's something that you can do immediately following this call. I'm not sure if there were any other calls to action from Alex or Tammy. Yeah, Tammy.
Yeah, it's okay if I share my screen.
Absolutely. Yes, please do.
Okay. Okay, so we have defense committees every month in our organizing centers. We have organizing centers again in Hazleton, Allentown, Reading, and Philadelphia, and we have monthly defense committees in each location. We are organizing rapid response teams and other forms of community mutual aid and defense committees. So if you are interested in joining, I will be sure to put my contact information in the chat. But please do reach out to us and consider joining our defense committees.
Wonderful, Tammy. Thank you. Thank you. And I don't know if you had a chance, everyone, there's a lot of information coming into the chat, but our executive director said this as well. We're going to wrap up some of these resources and get it out to everyone who registered for the event, so you can have that information, or if you can, just copy and paste right now that it's up. So some important calls to action. Tammy, if you could stop sharing your screen there. Some important calls to action. Now I'd like to jump into we have a little bit of time here to do some question and answer. And there's quite a bit that's in there. So I'll try to grab a few of these and we can walk through it. There was a question earlier from Melanie that said, is there any organization in Pennsylvania monitoring the purchase of large properties for camps? Are we aware of those?
Several of the organizations involved in PIC are working on that, and ACLU of PA is monitoring. I know PIC is monitoring as well. So for folks who haven't been aware of this, with the funding that ICE recently received, they're directly purchasing warehouses and attempting to convert those into detention facilities that would, with huge capacity. So I think, I don't know, Julio or Tammy, do you know the Shannon Valley, which previously was the largest detention center in the Northeast, is what, under 2,000 beds, right? Um, one of the warehouses that they're attempting to build. I believe in Schuylkill County would hold just under 8,000 people, right? So they're doing this, I believe, in 8 different states. They have gone through the purchase of I believe they've gone through the purchase of 8 different warehouses, and they're considering several more across several states. So it's really an emergency moment, but there are sort of ongoing campaigns. There's one here in Pennsylvania to shut down Moshannon, the Shutdown Detention Coalition, and that's also an area that we're tracking and working with other nonprofits to try to combat those in any way we can.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Another question that's out here, I think it's really important. Can someone describe what a judicial warrant looks like versus the what they put is the bogus warrants that they use?
I don't have a visual to share right now. I don't know if you could find one, Alex. I don't have it offhand, but the difference between a judicial warrant and an administrative warrant, it will say a federal court. So you'll see like a U.S. court, and it'll actually be signed by a federal judge. Whereas an administrative warrant, which is not a warrant, an administrative warrant is basically just signed by somebody in the Department of Homeland Security or ICE itself. And it's not a judge. It's not a federal judge. So you'll see the difference is it literally says U.S. court. Um, so the I think there's like a legal difference that is to be clear. Like they can't use an administrative warrant to go into a home or to like enter a private space in a business. Um, but it can be used to identify somebody and then take them like from the street. And that is something that ICE is using. Like rather than go to them at their home, they are surveilling people. There's heavy surveillance, which is a whole nother webinar. But the surveillance is happening where they're following people's patterns and they're trying to capture people like en route to work or en route to school or dropping the kids off or something like that. And these are not federal warrants. These are just like administrative warrants. It's just a list of people that they wanted to put in detention.
Got it. Got it. That's helpful. Thank you. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Was there someone else? No. Okay. Thank you. There were several questions about the number that we shared for CASA, and Shemaine was unable to be here, but some of those questions were wondering if that CASA hotline was only used for reporting ICE activity, and I thought I saw something in the chat that confirmed that, but maybe we can get some clarification on that. And also, can it be used in every county? Someone wanted to save it into their phone. Can someone address that for us a little bit? And maybe we could also share the CASA, We Are CASA website too, which can give us more information. But can anyone address that? There were several questions in there.
Tammy, go ahead.
No, but
I was going to say, I remember checking with CASA about this. As far as I know, it is statewide. It actually covers, I think, a couple of states, and you'll be routed to the primary organizer in our state in Pennsylvania. It's available in English, Spanish, and French as well. And I believe it is just for reporting any ICE raids and ideally using that SALUTE acronym or the ACTUAR acronym. I'm going to drop a link to a little bit more information in the chat now.
Thank you, Adrian. Very, very helpful. There was also a question. This one's interesting to you, Julio. Someone on the call is a local township supervisor, and they were wondering if there's an example of the ordinance that you were proposing.
Yeah, absolutely. I dropped it in the chat. I can include it, send it to you as well as a follow-up, and I also dropped my email, so I'd love to talk to them some more. Because usually I have to fight to talk to supervisors. It's not every day that they're willing to talk to me openly.
That's good. This is exactly what we wanted to achieve on this call, right? We don't want to preach to the choir. We want to like grow the congregation. That's what we're trying to do here. So that's beautiful. All right. That's good news. There's a question here. For my regional police, we passed a policy. So another person in local government, we passed a policy for not cooperating on administrative warrants with federal. It was a model. It was modeled on the PA State Police. We did pass. However, we found that the federal law that seemed to say we could not take action against the law enforcement officer who reached out to ICE. It looked as if those laws had allowed exceptions for medical professionals to opt out of providing care due to their beliefs. Can panel comment on any preemption or jurisdiction issues between local policy and federal law? That's the meat of that question. Can someone tackle that for us?
I can start. And I could send this to you. There is some explainers on USC 1373. So in a nutshell, to keep it in layman's terms, when there's information recorded for citizenship status or immigration status, that information would need to be provided to the federal government. So the model policy, the way that it's structured is we make it so that those questions are not asked unless there's a requirement to do so. So if someone's applying for public benefits, because you don't have to be a citizen. You can be a U.S. permanent resident. If there's information about citizenship being collected there, that has to be turned over. However, it's only name and status. They don't have to provide address, date of birth, or where they work. So if I'm a citizen and like they have that information, they say, "Can I get citizenship status for Julio Rodriguez?" Julio Rodriguez, comma, citizen. That's it. So what we say is that information is not captured, you have nothing to turn over, and there's legal precedent that says that there's no policy that has to compel government to collect that information unless it's required by law, which is I gave the example of public benefits application.
Got it. Got it. Really helpful. Okay, we are running out of time here. And I just wanted to point out there are billions of dollars that came from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Billions of dollars that are going to, it's between 130 and 133 billion that went to Homeland Security. Of that, 75 billion went directly to ICE. 45 of that is being used to expand and sustain detention facilities, and then the other 30 billion is used for enforcement activities. That's what our tax dollars are doing. Like this bill decided to take money away from healthcare and money, away from support programs for everyday people and actually plug them into this, which should be absolutely outrageous to everyone. This is all funded on our tax dollars. Laura, can you put up the slideshow? I just want to kind of buzz through very quickly. We only have a minute left of just making this more real for people about what is happening in our communities. This first slide that you see is actually ICE in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. That was in January of this year, where they were spotted. Next slide, please. We're just going to buzz through these. This is a correctional facility that's in Pike County. Continue. This one is in Hamburg. And this is from a news there, 87.4 million. Go to the next one. This was in the Menneson Valley. It's a geo group. Go to the next one. ICE there's a stop in Kingston, Pennsylvania. Go on. Exeter, this was a raid that was at the pallet shop. Go on. Now, these next three are a little bit unusual. They're from other states, but the reason I'm showing these is because people came together, they protested, and they managed to either shut down or stall these facilities. They did that by coming together and saying no, and we can be doing the same things here in Pennsylvania. This one is in Surprise, Arizona. Next one. This is in New Hampshire. Next one, and this one's in Salt Lake City, Utah. Protesters outside of a warehouse. This one, we were talking about warehouses. This is the Big Lots in Tremont that was just purchased. Next one. This one is a pop-up press conference in Forty Fort in Pennsylvania. Next one. And this one, with less than 24-hour notice right here in my hometown of Scranton, they had over 150 people show up as part of rapid response, which Tammy spoke to. So I just wanted to get that information out to folks. Thank you for sharing that. You can stop sharing the screen. And also, I just wanted to bring your attention. I dropped it in the chat. Our next policy action call, federal policy action call, will be on March 5th at 1 p.m. And it's called the Real State of the Union. It's coming a week afterwards, because I'm sure we're going to hear all kinds of things next week on the State of the Union. And if you've signed up for the Pennsylvania Policy Center emails, you'll be receiving information on the State of the Union, along with information so you can watch along. And it includes a bingo card too. In the past year, I think I've said the words, well, that wasn't on my bingo card, quite a number of times. So we created a new one, and we'll keep creating them. And then finally, as well, if you really want to plug into what's going on with billionaires getting huge tax breaks at the expense of everyone else, I would encourage you to join our For Our Commonwealth campaign. You can sign up as an organizer, and you can sign up as an individual or a change maker. That information's in the link there. I want to give a big thank you out to all of our speakers and their organizations doing this hard work, to our staff who put this together for us. Please stay tuned and share this information. We will continue to bring information like this to you. In the future, we're going to be looking at voting rights, which are under attack, and other subjects both on state and federal level. Thank you for plugging in.